Hi, folks. Lee Pacchia here, and you're watching In Between the Lines, part of Fault Line's daily effort to monitor the cracks in America's criminal justice system. My guest today, I'm really excited about this interview. We have Hipolito Acosta, former INS agent and co-author with A.J. Irwin of The Hunt for Maan Singh. He joins us from his office in El Paso, Texas. Hipolito, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
So I wanted to talk to you about the potential extradition and prosecution of drug lord Joaquín Guzmán. Most people know him as El Chapo. He, of course, is famous for escaping from Mexican prison multiple times. It looks like his next stop might be in the United States for prosecution and presumptively incarceration in a supermax institution, someplace that might do a better job of holding on to El Chapo for a longer period of time at least. Hipolito, take us through the story. Where are we right now in terms of process?
Well, as the public probably already knows, El Chapo is actually right across the border from El Paso, Texas. He's in a federal penitentiary called Ceferezo in Ciudad Juarez. It was one of the cities that was one of the most had the most criminal elements, the most murders just a few years back with the narcotics trafficking. El Chapo, I'm sure, had a lot to do with what was going on back then. But El Chapo was recaptured, as you well know, Lee, here a few months ago in early January down in Sinaloa, where he was based. And after he had escaped from a penitentiary down in not too far from mid-Mexico, Mexico City. But nevertheless, they have the process in place where judges in Mexico have authorized his extradition, and the Foreign Ministry has approved also the extradition process of El Chapo. As you're familiar with this story, there's 7 jurisdictions in the United States, including the one right across the river from where he's at right now in El Paso, that has requested his extradition. Actually, there's 2 requests, one from the Western District of Texas based in El Paso, and then there's one more jurisdiction that has also requested extradition. So with the Foreign Ministry agreeing that he's extraditable, now he has an appeals process in Mexico where he can try to fight it off, or we'll see if he might be willing to come to the United States.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is it a foregone conclusion at this point that he's going to end up in the United States? But it sounds like there's still a little bit mileage left in the appeals process. Any sense to what people should be looking at to see how things are going to turn out? Is it a 50-50 call at this point, or would you say odds are leaning in the favor of him being in the United States sometime soon?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be that far off, to be honest with you. And I don't really know that El Chapo might be want to fight the extradition. Even his attorneys have not agreed that he's going to file the appeal or not. So my sense is that El Chapo will be in the United States within the next 8 to 12 months. And he's going to come to the United States. And I kind of have a feeling that that is what he actually might want to do.
That's right, because we were talking about this before, and you were telling me that should he make it to the United States, he might be actually putting himself in a better position legally, putting himself in position perhaps to cut a sweetheart deal if he comes to the United States. I was a little bit surprised by that take, and that's why I'm glad to have you here with us today. Could you unpack that a little bit for us? Why would he get a better deal if he comes to the United States?
Well, as you well know, the U.S. government has already set a precedent in the past with bringing in drug lords and criminals and cutting deals with them. Ociel Cárdenas, who, by the way, was head of Los Zetas, one of the most brutal gangs in Mexico, and head of the Gulf Cartel, which rivaled El Chapo in terms of violence and in terms of production and smuggling of narcotics into the United States. He was brought into the United States and actually cut a sweetheart deal where he got a 25-year sentence. This is a guy that was headed one of the most brutal organizations in Mexico, but in his return for cooperation in finding millions of dollars of illicit gains in the United States, he cut a deal where he might actually be able to leave prison at one time. He won't be a young man anymore, but this drug lords, they feel they can live forever.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I mean, do you think that there are enough similarities between El Chapo's case and Cardenas Guillen's case to say that he might be able to get something like that period of time. I mean, I gotta say, 25 years, given the amount of charges that these people were facing, doesn't sound like a whole lot of time.
Well, it's actually not a lot of time when you're looking at somebody that might be 49 years old and has the possibility of being released when they're 74, 75 years old, or even 80 years old. They still look at the possibility that there's life after that. But here's the important thing: El Chapo, I would imagine, is a ton of intelligence. Can you imagine how much information he has on corrupt government officials in Mexico, on corruption in the United States? So you can imagine if I was still an agent and El Chapo was willing to sit down and truthfully talk about what he knew, that would be a fantastic gold mine for our intelligence agencies.
It's interesting to talk about this story in 2016. We've seen a tremendous shift in cultural attitudes and laws in the United States governing the war on drugs and general attitudes towards drugs. Looking at this trend, do you see it beginning to start to impact the way people involved in the war on drugs are prosecuted by the United States government?
Well, I think that I spent 30 years with the federal government. I retired under the Department of Homeland Security, and we always had very dedicated agents out there willing to pursue criminal activity, and we had fantastic operations. One of the things that give you an idea how far back this goes, I actually arrested the father of the twin brothers in Chicago, the Flores twins, who were the contact points of El Chapo, and they were running the cartel operations. I arrested their father 30 years prior on an undercover deal for a heroin transaction. So that's how far back it goes. So we've always been zealous in going after the criminal activity. I think that the U.S. government is very dedicated in going after the cartels, and obviously it's going to continue. It's not going to stop. As El Chapo was arrested, there's many willing to take his place in Mexico.
Do you think we'll see an end to the war on drugs in our lifetime?
I think it's going to continue for a long time. I don't think it's going to be an end. We have users in the United States. We have buyers, and so there's always going to be people willing to sell.
Hipolito Acosta, thank you for your time today, sir.
Thank you so much.
That's what we have for the week. If you'd like to see more of the stuff we're working on, be sure to go check us out online. You can find us at MimesisLaw.com under the Fault Lines tab. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you're listening to us as a podcast, do me a favor and write us a good review in iTunes. It makes a big difference. If you're watching us on YouTube, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. There's more good stuff coming. I'm Lee Pacchia. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Hi folks, Lee Pacchia here, and welcome to Nights and Weekends with me, Lee Pacchia. This is a brand new show from us at Mimesis devoted to something entirely different from what we've been up to lately. For about 2 years now, we've made a ton of content talking about law firms and with lawyers and stuff happening in the law space, but today we're going to go beyond the inside baseball. Today we're going to kick off a show that looks at the broader spectrum of human experience, the kind of stuff lawyers should be thinking about when they're not working, and if you're not a lawyer, you should be too. We hope you like it. Our first guest is an old friend of mine, producer and entrepreneur Dimitri Kofinas. I met Dimitri a couple years back at the height of the credit crisis. I was covering law and economics for Bloomberg Law, and Dimitri was the producer of Capital Account, a cable news program covering macroeconomics and finance on Russia Today. In addition to creating one of the better programs on TV, he started a video game company, a successful blog, a radio show, and he now has an off-Broadway theater company. Anyway, better you hear it from him. Ethics, though. Ethics in journalism, it's like...
I mean, ethics in journalism, ethics in life. Also, it's...
That's even more fungible than ethics in journalism.